Yes, I welcome to Mr. Sachin Rajguru, Mr. Manish. Manish is there, and Mr. Biju K and Mr. Sunder Krishnan. So, as that our topic is there for identity thefts and identity fraud, we know that also nowadays identity has become a critical thing for everybody. After that automation, demonetizations, now Aadhaar has become a critical thing for the payments as well as for pan-India for authorizations. If we see the changes in their identity for the banking as well as a government regulatory related things, earlier voter ID was there. That has to be there for each and every population for India. Later on, it has become PAN card for the unique identification for their accounts for dupe and other things. Now that Aadhaar has come. So scenarios are changing as well as times are changing. So we ask the first questions to Mr. Sachin. If you see that as a banker, what are the main critical identifications for the staff? Because staff is working in a bank with the contract vendor also. And in your banking or in any other banks also, we are seeing they are using many databases and that are not integrated with a single database. So how bank can have a identity for a staff that will be unique across the bank?
Oh, thank you so much for this question. In fact, I believe everybody here will agree that no bank can afford the employee's identity getting theft as such. But yeah, sure. In fact, if you see the recent case, the frauds which has happened with the Bangladesh bank, like I believe everybody knows that there was an internal, it's a kind of an identity theft which has happened to one of their employees and which has resulted to, approximately close to 1 billion kind of fraudulent transactions. Yeah, with this kind of protection for employees' identities within a bank's systems, like we have many systems, I agree on that. Like, the employees' identities are been stored on many different databases. But most of the controls or standards what every bank follows, like whether it may be a ISO 27000 or PCI DSS or even the RBI's regulations talks about preserving this or storing this in an encrypted format. So encryption is already there. Apart from this, yeah, some banks like my banks also use biometric to authenticate the users or the employees or staff to certain systems which are critical systems as such. Apart from this, yes, in fact, secure storage of this identification to prevent the data theft as such, which is primarily, responsible, which responsible for the frauds, identity frauds as such. Because if the data leak doesn't happen, then the fraudulent wouldn't, the hacker or the criminal would not be able to use this information to commit any frauds.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. As you said rightly, that also key that data segregation is very much required between that outsource vendors as well as that our internal staffs also. Thank you, Ian. My question is that Manish is there. Manish, if you see that nowadays, all the peoples, even we and other things, everybody is having their accounts in the social media. Okay. In a social media, we are having all types of details. Even I also wants to, and everybody wants to celebrate their birthday on the actual date of birth. Even they are hiding that actual date of birth in their service record. But there I want to have a actual date of birth. My parents' names, everybody, all relatives are there also. So if that customer informations as well as that other people informations are shared on a social media, so how that can be saved from that social media to means financial transaction as well as other authentications?
I think I call it going back to basics. A lot of people have said data is the new oil, and that's very true. The only difference here is that data is very fluid. The same data can exist in its exact copy in multiple locations. So as I say, security of data at rest, in transit, and while it's being processed. Having said so, if you're actually talking about protecting data, let's say protecting individuals or their credentials or their existence in the virtual world, there has to be a three-pronged strategy. You have to protect the user, you have to protect the device, and you have to protect the data. So to say that my strategy is only about protecting the data without having a strategy around protecting the device or protecting the user is like, probably firing a bullet but in the wrong direction. So protect the device, protect the user, protect the data. As far as social media is concerned, social media is just one more factor amongst a lot of other online services. I look at it as, I don't look at it as social media, I look at it as one more account. So somebody may have a professional LinkedIn account, you may have a Facebook account which is used more for personal networking, social networking, not professional networking, and you may have one or two bank accounts, you may have a trading account. As far as I'm concerned, I see all these as accounts that you need to protect. And I think the world is moving to a stage where at least where we say passwords are passé. So the traditional approach saying that, look, I have a long password and and I'm going to change it very, very frequently. So security based only on a password is passé. I think if the assets, the information asset, the online information asset, if it is critical enough to be protected, I think one of the natural course to follow is single sign-on with multi-factor authentication. So, and having said so, even that by itself is not enough as of today. So we are talking way beyond that, which may be beyond the scope of this discussion. So I think, it's about protecting the identity, which is what this topic is all about. So how do you protect the credentials? And before I finish, I just want to give an example. A couple of months back, I'm sure all of you, have gone through, that stressful period of when WannaCry and Petya, hit the world network ecosystem. So some people even described it as, weapons of mass destruction, and that's absolutely true. One of the critical differences between the two malware is that Petya, if it got into at least one computer in the ecosystem, did not require a vulnerability to spread. All it required was to steal credentials, and if those credentials had administrative capability or access across, let's say, a golden key kind of a scenario, it would simply spread. So that's how important it is to protect credentials.
Correct. Thank you, Manish. Thank you. Like you said that if we want to save our identity, we have to keep it our password secret. So like that password is like a toothbrush, we have to keep changing frequently nowadays. Thank you. My question is with the Biju. If we see that in a banking, as a government mandatory regulations, now Aadhaar has to be linked with the accounts. It's till 31st December. Now the date has postponed up to March also. Yesterday it was there. How that Aadhaar is linked with that bank and used as a payment system, whether it will going to change the payment industry, earlier like we are using the Visa and other things, how it will compete with the specific identity related to a person, because there are biometrics is there. If my password is compromised, I can change the password, but if my biometric is compromised, what to do that also? So what are the challenges will be there if that Aadhaar is linked to that? That has become a people's identity, and if it's compromised, or bank, whether it will be used in future as a payment systems for that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the question. So AEPS, that is Aadhaar enabled payment system, is going to be a reality that all directions from the government is in that direction. So the question is very pertinent. So what if the credentials are leaked? Unlike passwords, which we can change regularly, once biometric is lost, it's very crucial. So the we had a session in the morning from Awareness, the person from the UIDAI mentioned about the various security steps, which both at the UIDAI level as well as at the agency level, whether it's an AUA or a KUA. So everyone who collects the Aadhaar, so the biometric information from a person, has to follow certain security standards which ensures that the data collected from the customer remains confidential. That is very critical. Both the confidentiality and the integrity has to be ensured at all times. So there are various guidelines in that aspect. The Aadhaar Act ensures that the rules are in place, and there are various kinds of audits which ensures that the agencies which collects the Aadhaar data is kept accordingly. So that is one of the main thing which we have to. Then again, so the full mode in how the AEPS will come into picture is yet to be known. Like we have for NFC-based transactions, there are limits for up to certain limit only NFC can be enabled. Like that, also we may expect that there can be, just like Manish said, above a certain limit, there can be another 2FA also may pitch in. So those kinds of adaptive authentication strategies also will help to ensure that this is not misutilized by any other persons.
Yes.
I have a very quick point to make.
Yes.
And I would, as I said, I want to point out to an inadequacy in the system as of today. So, I'm mindful of the fact this is a bankers conclave, but I do want to be very forthright that we don't have the framework in place as of today. I implemented the cybersecurity governance for the Aadhaar, so hear me out on that. See, the government is pushing basically towards low-cost transactions, digital transactions. So you have NPCI, which is at the center of a lot of things. Sorry. You have the NPCI, and then you have a lot of applications, the BHIM application. Now Google has done something. So there's a lot of activity which is happening in the payment industry ecosystem. But let us understand that you have 4 different worlds which are converging. The first is the traditional banking system, right? The second is your emerging banks, the payment banks, which are new kids on the block, which come from a very, very different environment altogether. Then you have the Aadhaar, that's the 4th pillar, or the 4th world. And then you, the 3rd world. And then you have the 4th world, a 4th ecosystem by itself, and this is, smartphone device, smartphone manufacturers, hardware manufacturers. Now the point is that what is the hardware level security provided? Now if I have to use my mobile device as a means of using an Aadhaar authentication for a payment, what is the security that has been built into the device? So recently, the government has actually reached out to all mobile phone manufacturers, asking them to articulate as to what is the device level security in their products. Now, what is the challenge? You have 4 different worlds, but you don't have a common security framework which binds them together. All 4 of them come from different planets, and they all are converging into one ecosystem, but you don't have a centralized framework. As of today, as we speak, the Reserve Bank of India's cybersecurity policy and the cybersecurity framework do not adequately address this. So number 1, security of biometrics has still not been covered. Security of ATMs is still not covered. And I say this because I'm the co-author of the RBI IDRBT's frameworks for banks in India. So this is a huge lacuna. This is a huge gap area, and this needs to be addressed very, very urgently if we really want to push for Aadhaar authentication and keep the end customers safe.
Clearly, I think I was also in the cybersecurity framework design of insurance companies. I'm ex-banker though. And we sort of extended the cybersecurity framework to when the reinsurance brokers and intermediaries. But there is the 5th world, I would add, to those 4 worlds you put up. And that's the vendors, the service providers. Sometimes the real banking operation is done by the service providers. And I guess, do we have them covered well? I'm not sure, because the same security framework doesn't apply to them. It's more of audits.
If I may add, the security framework has one of the elements is outsourcing security.
Yes.
It's got about 15-20 controls. Is it enough? No. But at least for the first time, it recognizes the fact that security is largely being outsourced. So,
yeah. So we have due diligence, enhanced due diligence, background check, confidentiality, some audits, right to audit. Security framework, I'm not sure at all. So we have a 5th world also there.
Yeah.
And the challenge is again the linking that's going to happen. Every single person who handles financial, you have the insurance, you're the broker, everybody is going to link Aadhaar number, PAN number, and Everything is out there. So we are now facing a world where the personal information, Aadhaar number, PAN number is no more unique.
No more, yes.
So it's going to be free-flowing in a multimodal network.
Yes.
And data was doubling every year. Now it's going to exponentially rise. IDC, International Data Corporation, said by 2020, it's going to rise exponentially, which means personal information is going to freely flow across multimodal network. And therefore, it brings back to the point that he raised. Single sign-on with multi-factor authentication is what is the solution across the 5 worlds.
Yes.
It's no joke. It's going to be a tough proposition. 2020 is not far away, and we're already losing time.
And in fact, it is a very important point Mr. Manish has raised about the hardware level security being missed out of. It's not been enough thought given on the hardware framework or hardware securities that we're using the mobile devices, or maybe Manish from the defense and Navy background, anything that our defense or, they procure, they have a complete robust check on the securities and, workabilities of all the devices.
I'm glad you believe in that.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is a major miss out. In fact, we never know what are the threats or risk associated with the hardware level things which we are using in our pockets. Like if we take case of mobile devices, we don't know like what exactly are there any backdoors, or is there any data which has been going back to the manufacturer? Now even like IoT is coming up, there will be a lot of devices connected to the internet. So it's going to be little challenging to protect our own identities. We don't know which all databases are having our identities flashed out as such.
Great. Thank you, Sundar, and thank you, Sachin also. Sundar, my question is for you. Nowadays, we are seeing that organizations, I'm not taking only the bank, like insurance company and other things, they are having a outsourcing staff. They are having a cloud hosting database. They are doing the co-hosting of services also. And if we say the regulatory guidelines or as well as that bank security policy also, financial data should not be hosted on the cloud like that because the data is there. But organizations are hosting their HRMS related data. Their non-financial data, maybe mailboxes and other things, they are hosting there also. Their complete customer as well as staff informations are there. And organizations are not having that much control on the cloud which they are having in their own data centers. So in this scenario, what are the security points that organizations should take care when it is hosting their data outside their premises to save their identity as well as fraud related things?
I finished 3 years in Microsoft, and Microsoft is a cloud company and increasingly so. I'm seeing a huge amount of disruption happening in the ecosystem, a positive disruption happening in the ecosystem. The biggest challenge today, and that is resulting in credential theft, which is the topic of what we are really discussing, is that because in a cloud model, there's something known as a shared responsibility model between a cloud service provider and a customer. In most of the cases, including a recent case of one of the big four, because the way you put your question, I think, and let's call the big shot, it's the Deloitte story which came out. One of the main reasons is that lack of endpoint security, which is the customer's responsibility. So you can have the best security at one end, but the weakest link in the chain could still be your endpoint security. And if your endpoint security is not there, you end up compromising one set of credentials, which could happen to be the golden key. You have given the golden key to your house. That's what I want.
Sundar,
I think I would add to his point. And in fact, in these opening remarks, he mentioned user, device, and data. We address device and data. Yeah. User is where we need to address. Awareness is pathetic. And we need to ensure how do you do the privacy settings in all the social media across. How do you give key information in the phone, even if it's a call center verification. You need to really be careful what information you need to give. Because I think, especially in the Asian subcontinent, users give very freely information away. And then they come back to you, and I am recipient of most complaints as a chief risk officer. I had to go through and be sympathetic at the end of the day, because we haven't done much on the user education. And naturally, we'll have to address and resolve the complaints and face the loss. But the point is, that's a weak point. And we need to be careful So coming back to your question, how do you address the challenge from a privacy perspective? Have we taken the consent from users to share information with outsourcing service providers? Have we taken consent from the user or the customer to share information to the group? I'm part of a big conglomerate. So we tried to address this. So we said, let's put the consent clause in the proposal form or the application form. But back came the regulator, said, no, you'll just tick and then customer will not know. We have complaints where your agent is ticked, your customer, your salesperson has ticked that form, yes, 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 and shared the information, but later on customer comes back and screams that I haven't seen the clause. So then they said, okay, you take a separate consent from the customer to share the personal information or identity related information. And so you need to address, and with the Supreme Court judgment recently on privacy being a fundamental right, you would, or a right, not a fundamental right, but you need to address then the consent issue. How do you take consent when you share personal information with your service providers or group companies? Maybe cross-sell or upsell or downsell or to your outsourced partner when you share so many privileged information of customer with the outsourced partner. So these are issues that are going to come up, and increasingly you will find that there are suits filed for compensation, and there could be a class action suit which is now also part of the public legislation, corporate legislation. So it is going to be a challenging time with all these challenges coming in. And you as organization, user and ecosystem, you need to be ready to face this point that personal information is going to freely flow across multimodal network. Therefore, we have to come up with mitigating risk solutions. Mitigations such as multi-factor would help authentication, definitely. That's a good one. Encryption of the communications, because hacking is again a big risk. Man-in-the-middle attack. Yeah. You might send a OTP to the mobile, but the mobile number would be the hacker's mobile, although you would have hacked the number. So you still have issues, even with very good solutions like OTP, a multi-factor solution. Theoretically, it's easily possible for him to do the perpetrator attack.
My question is with that Manish, like that we have seen that Aadhaar is there and security for that biometrics and others are there. UIDI has suggested that also. If we see the today's scenario, most of the peoples, they are switching their jobs 2 to 3 years, 4 years. Now that mode of attendance in there are biometric. In many organizations, even hospitals, even small organizations, even small shopkeepers, they are putting their thumb impression as attendance. So biometrics are everywhere with the same person in different organizations. Okay. If you see the hospitals also, somewhere I have seen there also they are taking full 5 fingers, means a thumb impression as well as a 5 fingers also. Okay. In that scenario, if later on that their previous organizations or maybe some staff is there, they will misuse their data. So how we will say that also today that biometric is a unique authentication as well as their number is a unique identification will be used for future?
Very good question. So I come back, so let me speak in bullet points. Otherwise I could speak for 1 hour on this topic. The first is that there is no silver bullet. I come back to that old thing, there is nothing called a silver bullet. So there's no silver bullet solution out here. I think the second is, I would say a part solution to this complex problem is again multi-factor authentication. The third thing is encryption. How do you encrypt a certain amount of data and ensure data privacy? Great. The fourth is a very strong, so India, it's not to do with IT security for, I think all those who have even more gray hair than I have now in the audience, you will appreciate when I say, we have been a country which has been amazing at creating rules, but terribly poor at actually implementing them. So enforcement is something which we have been very poor at. But what is required is that it is, when you talk about biometrics, it cannot be spoken at a national level only in the context of the BFSI sector. And that's why I said it's a very good question. It has to be spoken in the context to a larger ecosystem to Today, all central ministries in Delhi are using biometric to mark the attendance of bureaucrats. Amazing, awesome. At least they attend. They land up in office on time, hopefully, and hopefully get some work done. The point is, how do you protect this? So you need a national standard which defines rules and regulations that when a company comes up with a biometric based solution, what are the security or safeguards that need to be put into it, not just to protect it from leakage, but also protect it from misuse. And this must be supported with a framework, a national framework, which gives very clear guidelines to companies which adopt these technologies. So, and there must be a price to pay in case someone is found to have flouted, either from a manufacturer's perspective or from a company implementation. I'll give you an example, the GDPR, the data privacy regulations of the EU that are coming. There is a very, very strict penalty. A sizable percentage of the global turnover of that company in case they were found to be willfully in violation of the GDPR laws. That's a huge, huge sum of money. I think in a banker's conclave, you will understand the concept, paise ki baat hai. It's money that counts. Make organizations, liable from a monetary perspective. Believe me, in India, everybody will fall in.
Yes, I agree. In that earlier days, when we see that also bank robbery is there, so that time the bank were looted. In that online channel, when the hacking or robbery is there, customers are looted.
You brought out a very good question, and I want to throw another spanner in the works. We have, I hope we have some insurance sector people out here. So increasingly year on year, CRO, we have a CRO. So this should be very important for you because this is going to impact you. So year on year, we are seeing a significant increase in the amount of losses, financial institutions are facing on account of cyber fraud. Clear? Now, increasingly, I don't think there is any bank which is not taking an insurance cover against something known as cyber risk. Am I right?
No, I think
now
everybody.
Yes, now cyber insurance has come in picture.
So
the fact of the matter is that the insurance companies now. So imagine if the insurance companies were to dive deeper, the level of compliance for every bank with respect to a security baseline, even the basic security baseline set up by RBI last year. Well, I can tell you because I work with the entire ecosystem, everybody is not at the same level. And hence, it's like this, when an insurance company comes to me, when I approach an insurance company for life insurance cover, there are certain questions. Do you smoke? If I say yes, plop, up. The insurance cost goes up by 5% premium. Do you drink? How many times? Well, another 10% I see escalation in insurance cost. So why should that not happen in the banking sector? Why I'm not using the word why, I'm saying this is coming. So increasingly the banking sector needs to do a lot of introspection to see that with respect to not only and security baseline is a security baseline, but at least the security baseline and upwards of that, how compliant are you? Otherwise, you're going to see a significant increase in insurance cost. There are many other factors which increasingly insurance companies and the actuaries are currently working on. Because you can't have an exponential increase in losses on account of cyber frauds year on year, which are offset to insurance companies without answering some difficult questions.
Sure.
And so this is something that the banking sector has to be prepared for.
I just add to that. So recently when a private bank was hacked, and they had taken cyber insurance. I think everybody knows the name. So. And again, a big four auditor was appointed to find out the extent, value, and the volume of loss. And there were several audits carried on by that company to identify how much is the loss. So yes, so there is a lot of expenditure.
Yes.
And yes, the insurance company would have also faced a huge hit.
See, it's not that the insurance companies are not making money. Otherwise, these insurance companies would not have been in the business. They would have rolled up this cyber risk.
We reinsure this risk.
Yes, but what they are seeing is perhaps the amount of premium they are seeking from banks is not commensurate with the kind of risk that is being offset onto the insurance companies. So the actuaries are working on this. I think this is the time for the banking sector to do a solid introspection, to wake up to this. Otherwise, you're going to see a significant and exponential increase in your insurance costs.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's the hard.
Yes,
that's the hard
that is fully agree, because for regulator also customer is a first. Means if we see the customer protection liability circular, which is that RBI has recently released in June or July. So they have mentioned there also that onus to prove that customer liability and their security breach is there lies on bank. Means we have to show that there are some lapses from the customer side. And that, like that you told about that cyber insurance, so every organizations or even banks, they are taking, even when they are outsourcing the activity, they are asking their outsource vendor also to take the cyber insurance to protect their liabilities and other things.
Even insurance companies like me, I also have to take cyber insurance for the data that I run. So.
Yeah, Sachin, I think you want
to add. The questionnaire is so robust, like I have filled up 80 questions to.
Yeah, absolutely. Need that kind of granularity.
See, the challenge today is that, you mentioned Bangladesh Bank. Well, the central bank in Bangladesh was highly compliant. So there is no bank which says, hey, I am only 50% or 80% compliant. Everybody is compliant. There's still as we speak, there is still $82 million which is untraceable. And it's not going to come back because it's gone through the casino industry. Somebody had a great time in Philippines, Manila. The bottom line is this, that the time has also come to do an introspection on the quality of audits being performed. It's like this. If I go to a doctor and I'm not well, and I expect the doctor to tell me, hey, all is well, and instead of $100, I'm going to charge you 200 rupees because I'm telling you all is well, although all may not be well, I don't come back any better. In fact, I come back off worse. So audits, whether a risk assessment, whether a vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, the whole process, and even financial risk assessment, this entire thing is performed for a purpose, and it must be done, with due diligence. And I think somewhere in the industry, this is being missed out.
I fully agree. Actually, myself and Sunder was there in one discussions earlier at one. So that time we told that also everybody knows about the controls and other things like that. They are preventive, detective, correctives like that also. But I think the new control has to be come in picture strongly. That is a monitoring control. Preventive control is a preventive till that you are not monitoring, because you applied some patch and something is there. That may become detective. That may become like that, means like that it's not working like that. But if you are applying a monitoring as a control, means like that something has to be reviewed periodically, then your controller systems will work effectively. So monitoring has to be there for each and every level. Even your encryption is working, even your denial of firewall rules are working, then your system will be robust is there.
How many of you in this audience are actually using digital signatures to sign your mails in the banking system? Which bank as of today in the country can say that, look, across my entire ecosystem, we ensure that every mail which goes out, we sign it with a digital signature? And then, yes, you have to protect your private key as well if you're using public key infrastructure, not to my knowledge. And how many decisions end up getting taken place, based on mails, instructions, work that happens done on mails? These are fundamental issues, which is why when I started, my first comment was that the time has come to go back to the basics. So we can create a huge skyscraper. You can end up spending tons and tons of money, and which it really pains me to see the banking sector today is spending tons and tons of money, and perhaps you're not getting your money's worth. In fact, not perhaps, you're actually not getting your money's worth, because we are not addressing the core fundamental pillars of cybersecurity. So it's like creating a skyscraper or a huge building without strong foundational, without a strong foundation.
I fully agree with you. My question is with Sachin. Nowadays, every bank are advising to the customers, we don't ask any passwords and other things, don't believe any call and other things. So in future, what will happen when a bank will genuinely call to the customer and tell that also there is some problem is there in your accounts and other things, and customer will tell that also, no, because there is a fake call and other things also. That is a one scenario. Second scenario, because all the informations are available in social media and other things, how customer will authenticate to himself and a bank call center, yes, I am a genuine customer, I want to change these details in my account. So what will be the challenges in there to establish a identity for a bank or as well as a customer? Yes, I am a genuine customer.
Yeah. The customer is not going to believe the caller as a bank as such. Because the level of preaching or customer awareness programs have reached, so many banks are following. So many emails are being thrown out to the customer's inbox about training or, on an awareness basis, whether it may be a, phishing awareness or, because it has reached to such an extent now, I think it has been overdosed to a customer. And if he gets a call or something from bank, he might not be able to, believe that it's going to be an authentic or legitimate call from the bank as such. Yeah, talking on to the phishing kind of things on an identity theft, we've seen in recent article I have read, it has grown up to 500% increased on year basis on an phishing attempts to the customers in the financial industry specifically on a global level. Yeah, of course, this is the very easiest way for the hackers or the criminals to gain personal identification or a user or the identity access of a user or customer by attempting any kind of phishing attempts. Just day before yesterday, I saw an email as a phishing attempt to one of my friend. As it looks like it's been sent by our IT department, income tax department, saying that the income tax department has approved a return of 25,000 amount or so and so. So if you want to get this deposited to your account, please fill up the attached form as such. I don't believe IT department will send such emails as such, because if the return is approved, they directly credit to the bank account, which is already there in the database. So phishing attempts on gaining access of personal identification or identity theft kind of an attacks has been growing, and the banks and financial institutions really want to focus more on this, have more controls on this, because I see even my bank's websites have been duplicated, and my customers have been sent an email which replicates the similar kind of a front page of the bank asking them user IDs and passwords. This has become really a threat for us such in today's industry.
Yes, I agree with that. My quick question with the Biju is there like that. I asked him also to establish an identity for a bank as well as a customer. See, now every data is there with that public. So if suppose tomorrow customer calls to bank like that, ki I have forgot to change my mobile number, my address, my email ID. So what are the things that bank will take in notice? Ki yes, we can authenticate. I think there is only the mobile number and OTP will be there, because that is a dynamic, because whatever things are there static that can be compromised today or tomorrow or any later day. So what is your opinion in that also?
Changing the existing credentials is it has to be handled in a very secured manner. So for example, the mentioned case itself, mobile number change or email ID or some other confidential information. So, but nowadays, each of the banks are providing many options to the customers, like from simple options like go to the ATM. So then in that case, the customer can authenticate the transaction by using the ATM card and the ATM PIN. That is something which he has and something which he knows. So the transaction can be done in a secured manner. So earlier, compared to only like IVR facilities or over phone, now each of the banks provide multiple facilities to the customer without going to the branch premises itself. So in any case, the basic thing is that the bank has to authenticate, ensure that the authentication is done. It is the same customer itself. So as I said earlier, the onus of proving that it was a genuine transaction lies on the bank. So it's from a customer protection angle only. So we have to give necessary steps to the customers, measures, facilitate the customer to do it in a safe manner.
Yes.
Just to add, more importance is given now to associated processes over it. So supposing you change your credential, say mobile, what you will do is then you will send a SMS to the old mobile and the new mobile.
Yeah.
And then inform, you have changed this,
Yes, yes, yes.
so that you alert the customer. And also now we run analytics. So for instance, in insurance policy, just 6 months before the policy is going to mature, somebody changes the credential, that immediately thrown as an alert in the fraud monitoring system.
Yes, yes.
And then you find out, is this real or is a fraudster who knows insider fraudster, who knows this information trying to misuse the information. So you have good analytics, use of analytics now, alerts, monitoring mechanisms in place for at least credential changes, the way they are handled. But people, process, technology, all are important. Awareness of given to employees, users, how do we handle these things? Processes, more importantly, and certification and robustness of those processes. And of course, technology-based controls.
Great, great. Thanks to all my panel members. Thank you. Thanks a lot.